Katy Perry just won $1.8 million from an 85-year-old dying veteran in a mansion battle that's been raging for 5 years. The internet is furious. But before you cancel Katy Perry, you need to hear what really happened. Because this story, it's not what you think. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. New York Post just dropped a bombshell. As you can see, Katy Perry to receive $1.8 million payout from dying veteran, 85, in years-long battle over Montecito mansion. And we're covering this news because the headlines make it sound like Katy Perry is some kind of monster who's taking money from a sick elderly man. But here's the thing, when you dig into the actual court documents, the timeline, and the evidence, this case is way more complicated than anyone's reporting. We're talking about a $15 million mansion deal, mysterious medication claims, competing buyers, text messages that change everything, and a legal battle that reveals the truth about who's really telling the truth. Stick around because we're breaking down the full story, from how this mansion deal went down in 2020, to why Carl Westcott tried to back out, to the evidence that shocked the judge, to today's $1.8 million ruling. This is a mystery with more twists than a Katy Perry music video. Let's rewind to May 2020. Carl Westcott, an 85-year-old veteran and Texas entrepreneur, buys a stunning $15 million mansion in Montecito, California. This isn't just any property. We're talking 2.5 acres, 8 bedrooms, 11 bathrooms, ocean views, an infinity pool, and neighbors like Oprah and Ellen. Carl buys the property on May 29th, 2020. But here's where it gets interesting. Just 6 weeks later, in July 2020, he decides to sell it. And the buyer? Katy Perry. Now, Carl's real estate agent presents him with an offer from Katy Perry's business manager, Bernie Goodvie, for $13.5 million. But Carl doesn't just accept it. He counters with $15 million. Katy agrees. The deal is signed on July 14th, 2020. But just days after signing the contract, Carl Westcott tries to back out. He claims he was recovering from major back surgery and was on heavy pain medication that left him too impaired to understand what he was signing. He also points to Huntington's disease, a neurological condition he was diagnosed with in 2015, as proof that he lacked the mental capacity to approve the sale. But that's not the full story, because when Katy Perry's legal team investigated, they found something shocking: text messages, emails, evidence that Carl Westcott was way more aware than he claimed. Here's where this case gets fascinating. Because Katy Perry's lawyers didn't just argue that Carl was competent, they brought receipts. During the 2023 trial, Katy's legal team presented, Carl didn't just passively sign papers. He rejected Katy's initial $13.5 million offer. He countered with $15 million. He extended key deadlines. He was actively involved in every step. This is huge. Carl wasn't just dealing with Katy. He was entertaining interest from Maria Shriver. Yes, the Kennedy family member and journalist. Carl was shopping around for the best deal. If Carl was so impaired and confused, why was he organizing property tours? Why was he communicating directly with Katy's team about details of the house? And here's the kicker. Carl's own medical expert, the doctor his legal team brought in, could not offer a definitive explanation supporting his claim of incapacity. Even his own expert couldn't back him up. In November 2023, Judge Joseph Lipner ruled that Carl Westcott was coherent, engaged, lucid, and rational at the time he signed the contract. The judge shut down Carl's attempt to rescind the deal. But wait until you hear what happened next. Because this is where the story takes a dark turn. Because even though Katy won the right to buy the mansion, Carl still wouldn't let it go. And what Katy discovered about the property during those 4 years, it's going to shock you. From July 2020 to May 2024, 4 years, Katy Perry was stuck in legal limbo. She'd paid $15 million for a mansion she couldn't move into. Carl Westcott refused to leave. And during those 4 years, something terrible happened to the property. According to court documents, the mansion fell into disrepair. We're talking water damage throughout the property, a fallen tree that nobody removed, general neglect and deterioration, repairs that would cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. But here's what makes this even more frustrating for Katy. She couldn't rent the property during those 4 years. And in Montecito, where celebrities rent estates for $100,000 plus per month. That's a massive financial loss. Katy's legal team calculated that she lost more than $3 million in potential rental income. Think about that. $3 million she could have earned by renting to celebrities, executives, or wealthy vacationers. And the repairs? Another $1.3 million needed to fix the damage caused during the legal battle. So, in November 2025, just last week, Katy Perry filed a lawsuit seeking $4.7 million in damages from Carl Westcott. She argued that his refusal to honor the contract cost her millions and destroyed the property she'd legally purchased. Now, this is where people started getting angry, because the headlines screamed, "Katy Perry sues dying 85-year-old veteran for millions." It sounds horrible, right? Like Katy is some greedy celebrity kicking a sick old man while he's down. But here's what those headlines don't tell you, because there's a reason the judge sided with Katy. And when you hear the full truth about Carl Westcott's claims, you're going to understand why this case isn't as simple as rich celebrity versus sick veteran. Let's talk about Carl Westcott, because the narrative that he's just a confused, sick, elderly man, it's not the full picture. Carl Westcott is an 85-year-old veteran, yes, but he's also a successful Texas entrepreneur. He's not some vulnerable person who was taken advantage of. He's a businessman who's made millions in real estate deals throughout his life. And here's what the court found. Carl bought the Montecito mansion on May 29, 2020, for around $11 to $12 million. 6 weeks later, he sold it to Katy Perry for $15 million. That's a $3 to $4 million profit in just over a month. But then something happened. The Montecito real estate market exploded. Properties that sold for $15 million in July 2020 were worth $20 to $25 million by late 2020. Celebrities were fleeing LA for Montecito during COVID. Prices were skyrocketing. And that's when Carl Westcott had seller's remorse. Katy Perry's business manager testified that Carl realized he could have gotten more money for the property. And that's when the "I was too medicated to understand" claims started. The judge agreed. In his ruling, Judge Lipner noted that Carl's claim of incapacity conveniently appeared after the market surged. The timing was suspicious. And remember those text messages and emails? They showed Carl actively negotiating, considering multiple offers, and making strategic decisions. That's not someone who's impaired. That's someone who's trying to get out of a deal they regret. Now, does Carl Westcott have Huntington's disease? Yes. Is he elderly and dealing with health issues? Absolutely. But does that mean he was incapacitated when he signed a contract in July 2020? The judge ruled no. Fast forward to this week, November 28, 2025. Judge Joseph Lipner issues his final ruling on damages. Katy Perry sought $4.7 million. The judge awarded her $1.8 million. Here's the breakdown. $3.5 million for lost rental income. The judge calculated how much Katy could have earned renting the property from 2020 to 2024. $260,000 for property repairs, water damage, fallen tree removal, and bringing the property back to its 2020 condition. Minus $1 million. The judge deducted this amount because Katy was able to invest some of the withheld funds during litigation, offsetting some losses. Final award, $1.84 million. Now, Carl Westcott's attorneys argued the property couldn't have been in disrepair because Katy rented it to Chris Pratt and Katherine Schwarzenegger after taking control in May 2024. But Katy's team countered that she fixed the damage herself before renting it out. She's not seeking reimbursement for repairs she completed. She's seeking compensation for what should have been done to honor the original contract. The judge agreed with Katy. A final judgment hearing is scheduled for December 30th. 2025. Unless Carl files a valid objection in the next 10 days, the $1.8 million payment will be finalized. So here's the question. Is Katy Perry a villain for suing an 85-year-old veteran? Or is she simply holding someone accountable for backing out of a legal contract and costing her millions? This case isn't just about Katy Perry and Carl Westcott. It's about contract law. It's about what happens when someone signs a legal agreement and then tries to back out because they regret it. Here's the reality. Carl Westcott signed a contract. He negotiated the terms. He countered Katy's offer. He extended deadlines. He arranged property tours. And then, when the market went up, he claimed he was too impaired to understand what he signed. The judge looked at the evidence, text messages, emails, medical records, expert testimony, and ruled that Carl was competent. If Carl had succeeded in backing out, it would have set a dangerous precedent. Anyone could sign a contract, wait for the market to change, and then claim they were too medicated or too confused to understand. That's not how the law works, and that's why the judge ruled in Katy's favor. Does it suck that Carl is elderly and dealing with health issues? Absolutely. But that doesn't erase the fact that he signed a legal contract and then refused to honor it for 4 years. So here's your takeaway. The headlines make it sound like Katy Perry is suing a dying veteran out of greed. But the truth? Carl Westcott signed a contract, had seller's remorse, and tried to back out by claiming he was impaired, despite evidence showing he was fully aware. Katy lost millions in rental income and repair costs because Carl refused to honor the deal, and the judge agreed she deserves compensation. I want to hear from you, Team Katy or Team Carl. Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if this story shocked you, hit that like button, subscribe for more deep dives, and share this with someone who only read the headlines. The truth is always more complicated than it seems. I'll see you in the next one.